Wichita's top boss goes back on punishment promised to the public. The Wichita police officer disciplined 3 times for sending a meme deemed racist by the city, giving his side for the first time. The city of Wichita investigated 13 officers. This was last year for sending inappropriate text messages. Those texts were discovered after a search warrant for a separate incident. Those officers were disciplined. 3 resigned or retired. Tonight, FactFinder investigator Haley Tucker obtained documents showing Wichita city manager reversed discipline to one of those officers involved. Haley?
Mike, that's retired Sergeant Jamie Crouch. WPD originally disciplined him for texting a meme of a naked black man sitting on the neck of George Floyd in 2020. Crouch was first disciplined with a written reprimand by WPD. Crouch admits it was bad judgment, but says he is not racist. Then those texts and the officers' names were leaked to the media. Due to public outcry, the city of Wichita then disciplined the officers again, and Crouch was suspended. Crouch took this discipline to an outside party to investigate, and tonight I obtained a letter sent by City Manager Robert Layton to Crouch, where Layton reverses harsher punishment that he told the public was necessary. City Manager Robert Layton is the top official in the city of Wichita. Most things, including some Wichita police discipline, go through the city manager's office. Over the last 2 years, FactFinder talked with Layton multiple times about inappropriate text messages sent by some Wichita police officers. Layton claims he had no idea about the texts until they were leaked to the media.
And none of us knew about it.
Former and current high-ranking Wichita police authorities claim Layton definitely knew because he was involved in several conversations regarding those texts. Now, FactFinder obtained these documents about one of the officers involved. Retired Sergeant Jamie Crouch said he is not racist and didn't think sending the meme of a naked black man sitting on the neck of George Floyd was racist because he had gotten it from a black WPD officer, but he admits he acted in poor judgment. In November 2021, WPD gave Crouch a written reprimand for the text. 7 months later, after the public found out, Crouch was suspended for 8 days, and his original discipline violation was increased. More than a month after that, he was suspended again in a public press conference held by City Manager Robert Layton. Layton said he didn't believe the original punishments were enough.
It is simply my response to behavior that I find unacceptable.
But FactFinder is now questioning the city manager's public punishment. Here's why. An arbitrator or outside party worked with the city and the police union to look over how this situation was handled. The arbitrator found the city violated Crouch's employment contract several different times. Now Layton says he'll reverse the suspensions that he made publicly and will reinstate the original punishment, which was a written reprimand only. Crouch has since retired from WPD. Crouch wanted an apology from the city manager after the arbitrator's findings. He did not get one. Layton responding today saying in part, the FOP successfully argued that a procedural technicality prevented more serious discipline. Layton says people of Wichita should know he still finds Crouch's actions abhorrent and further behavior of any officer or employee will not be tolerated. He goes on to say the city strongly disagreed with the arbitrator's decision but accepted it, and now the city is taking action to ensure further discipline will not be overturned on procedural issues.